affiliation with Knox College?
Well, I didn't exactly grow up dreaming of going to Knox College. I mean, I grew up in Knox County on the eastern side over along Spoon River. And you've probably all heard of Edgar Lee Masters and the Spoon River Anthology. And I eventually got around to reading that. But actually, it was a recruiter who came to my high school, Tom Anderson, and we just seemed to connect. And the more he told me about Knox, and I was granted an Illinois State scholarship, so I was getting letters from many, many schools, and hadn't really. First, I thought about University of Illinois, but I'd gone to a high school. I believe our graduating class was a whole 24, so I thought, well, that's going to be a big leap to go to the University of Illinois.
Yeah.
Knox College would be a better, easier, more gradual move for me. And so the rest is history. I just ignored all the other letters. I didn't visit any other campuses. I thought, well, I'm going to fit in here.
Yeah. You were the class of 1973.
So yes, class of 73. So I started in the fall of 1969. Started studying a little bit of everything, like you should do at a liberal arts school. Take advantage of some sampling of all of it. Took optics in the physics department, and got through Calculus 1 anyway, and math, and had one term of chemistry or two. But I was always drawn toward history, maybe because of my family. We came to Knox County in 1841. I grew up, my dad was the youngest in the family, so I grew up hearing stories from the older uncles. They were great storytellers, and I think fairly accurate. And my parents and I went to many Civil War battlefield grounds and presidential libraries, many historic sites, and so that kind of rubbed off on me. And so I started studying more history courses, but also was interested in social and particularly anthropology. And so I thought about a double major, and then opportunity arose that Bill Matthews, who I think used to have this office, was a religion professor at the time. He was going to be the advisor for the ACM Far East Asian Studies program at Waseda University. So I thought, well, I've only taken one class from Bill, but I've spent a lot of time with him, and decided, yeah, I want to do that. And so did a lot of comparative culture between Asian culture and Western culture. How do they do things, and how do we do things? And it was a good learning experience. And then I came back and still didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I was going to take a job for a summer, whatever the best job was I could qualify for. So I put a lot of thought into it, and had the Peoria Journal-Star on a Sunday morning there at my parents' house, and looked down the alphabetical order, accountant. I didn't take accounting. The next thing is adjuster. Well, I said, Dad, what's an adjuster? And he told me, well, they figure out what the insurance company's going to pay. And, he said when he ran a garage, they'd come in if, he was working on something insurance related. They'd figure out, okay, how much insurance pay and how much customer pay. I said, well, that sounds okay. I said, do they ever get shot? And he said, no, not normally. I said, okay. So I folded up the paper and put it away, and we took a Sunday drive. And on Monday, I went and applied for a job as an adjuster, thinking, well, this would give me exposure to the legal profession, one of the things I'd considered. And after working with lawyers for about a year, I decided probably I wouldn't be cut out for the legal profession. And I thought, well, I can do this job, but do I want to just settle in here? And so I took a few other jobs. I was in outside sales for building materials, and helped open a shoe store here in Galesburg when the mall opened. And was a district circulation manager for the Peoria Journal-Star. I thought, well, that's giving me a sampling, so handling claims is not so bad. Probably I'm best suited for that. And so I went back to it. Then that was my career for most of 40 years.
Wow. We got your whole story
there. And it flew by in a hurry.
Yeah.
And you've lived in?
Galesburg mostly. I lived in Evansville, Indiana. I lived in Peoria. I lived in Chicago. and of course the experience in Tokyo. So I haven't always lived in Knox County, but I said, well, I've experienced life in the fast lane. I think I like life in the slow lane.
Yeah.
Came back here, and it's just a more relaxed pace than it is a lot of places. Oh, okay. Well, I've always been interested in history. When I was a student here, on a warm afternoon, I would take my books over to Hope Cemetery and lean up against a monument. It might be a little cold on the ground, but the monument was warm. Sometimes a garter snake would crawl up my back. It was okay. I mean, it was just a little friendly little snake. Nothing. It just liked the warmth of my body, I guess. So I knew about Hope Cemetery. Herman Milder used to give tours of Hope Cemetery, so I was on at least one, maybe two of his tours. They would be usually given on Founders Day, and since that's in February, they were kind of short tours, but we didn't tromp out to every grave, but he would point to the person and tell us about them. So that was a good introduction to Hope Cemetery for me. And then after I moved back here, I joined the Galesburg Historical Society and Knox County Genealogical Society. And the condition of the cemetery was very poor. It hadn't been manicured. It's kind of a tender way of putting it. It had grown up in brush, is what we should say, and had all kinds of volunteer trees or shrubs. Tree of Heaven, I remember they were all over the place. We even had some multiflora rose in there. When the Genealogical Society, and I was not part of this group, but when those people went down, they were going to start writing down all the epitaphs, all the information that was on the tombstones. Well, couldn't find a lot of them. They knew they were there. Well, that was kind of the beginning of the renovation. And so that would have been about 1976 or 7, probably. And so one of the retired school teachers here in town, Virginia Hinchcliffe, took an interest in it. And I said, well, I would go down and photograph and take slides. And back then we didn't have everything digital. I had to take regular slides. A slide projector, a good camera. So I photographed it, and she and I put together a presentation. And we asked for donations of either money or human labor. And Martin Reichel was also quite involved in it. He had McFall Monument Company. I want to give him a lot of credit. And he knew some people who had tractors, and the brush was so bad they had to use tractors and log chains to wrap around some of these clumps of brush and pull it that way. Wow. It was terrible. Yeah. So that's kind of where I got involved. I didn't go on the board there right away, but probably another year or two I was invited onto the board. So that would have been around 1978, I suppose. And then I've been on the board mostly since then. I got off the board so we could get a position available for a younger person, because I'm thinking long term. And we got a wonderful candidate, John Wren, attorney here in town, and I knew him from my work, and a lot of respect for the man. He attended one meeting, and unfortunately he died of a heart attack not too long after that. So we're still looking for a few more younger people. I think we're going to get some. And so anyway, that's kind of how my interest started from Knox College days on through to coming back and seeing the condition of the cemetery and what needed to be done.
How would you describe your relationship with the cemetery today?
Today, I am trying to kind of wean away from it a bit. Jack Templeton and Nancy Gollinghorst are I forget who's the treasurer, one's the secretary and one's the president. They're doing a fine job. In fact, they were able to get some, I guess we'd call it a stipend, some assistance from the city of Galesburg. First time we ever got anything like that, so they're doing a good job with that. We are, of course, I say we, I mean Hope Cemetery. It's a private cemetery. Yeah. When the next cemetery that Galesburg created was formed as Linwood Cemetery, and it was municipal. It was city-owned. Of course, we didn't have a city government when Hope Cemetery started. Hope Cemetery was started under the auspices of the First Presbyterian Society, which was Old First Church. So not unusual for churches and cemeteries to be associated, but they didn't have the typical geographic proximity of the churchyard, graveyard, that kind of thing. But anyway, 1860s then Hope Cemetery formed, and that was about the same time that Linwood Cemetery was formed. So there had been discussion even back then of why not make Hope Cemetery municipal, because the way a cemetery works, a lot of your income is from the sale of lots. Well, after your cemetery is filling up, you don't have the lots, and Hope Cemetery would have been cut off by Cedar Fork, the waterway, so it was limited. It was as far as it was going to go. Well, if they had combined the two entities, then the sale of lots at Linwood would have helped finance Hope Cemetery. So Hope Cemetery has relied a great deal on donations, and fortunately there have been donations. And now we get a little bit, $10,000 a year from the city. And that takes a lot of pressure off of us as far as maintenance, and it can only be used for maintenance. We can't use it to restore monuments or anything like that. It's just for the grounds. Sometimes we have a rather expensive tree to remove, and they can be several $1,000s just for one tree because the accessibility is difficult in there. So,
how do you see the changes we were just talking about in Galesburg playing out at Hope Cemetery?
Well, interestingly enough, Hope Cemetery was ignored when Galesburg was booming, and we've paid more attention to it since. An irony, I think. But when this town was booming, it was like, they didn't even think too much about Hope Cemetery. Everybody seemed to notice the big Civil War monument with the soldier in the corner. And then people, I can remember way back when, well, who's buried in Hope Cemetery? Well, that's a long list, but I said the founders, because that's really what I feel is the most significant. The founders of Knox College. They came here to found Knox College, and incidentally founded Galesburg, because they had to have some place to put the college and to live. And so I would say, my strong feelings of association and importance of Hope Cemetery is due to the founders. Most of those 232 people who were among the founders are buried at Hope Cemetery.